So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Yin Yoga this beautiful day. Let's sit for a minute and get centered. So allowing yourself to sit in your favorite spot, closing your eyes, and feeling and sensing your physical body, and allowing and sensing how the body is breathing. I've started to move towards the focus of building ojas, which is what the Ayurveds call our juju, or our life vitality. As we are in spring, whether your weather shows it or not, we are technically in this season of change and transition. And not only are we in a difficult, challenging time in the world, but we're also part of the elements of nature. And our bodies follow these transitional times, which can make us feel vulnerable, can lead to us being sick if we're not, taking optimal care of ourselves. It can lead to stress responses in the mind. And so building ojas helps us to build resiliency and vitality. So we're going to focus on that today. And so you might just take a moment to see if you can sense and feel how vital your body feels. Does it feel depleted? Is there a sense of resiliency or even vitality? Allow the hands to come together at the heart center. And whether you could sense that or not, don't worry about it. We'll kind of tap into it as we travel along today. Not holding any intention that you might have come to your mat with. And allow the class to be exactly what you need. Take a nice deep breath. And as you exhale, letting the hands float down, softly open the eyes. Okay, so let's start like we always do on our backs. We're going to start with a somatic movement. It'll be helpful today if you have a blanket or a bolster nearby. And so once you're on the mat, lying down on your back, like you're doing Shavasana. And once you're down here in your Shavasana shape, just check yourself out again. I always like to think about my outer awareness. What does my shape look like if I were to look at myself from the top down? And then my inner awareness, what does my inner body feel like? When I, as a teacher, as I walk around a room, when I'm in person, I'm always kind of surprised when I look at people lying in Shavasana and how they think they're straight, and they're really not. They're very crooked a lot of times because that's what their normal is. And so we're going to move a little bit to help this internal system. Ojas can be depleted by lots of different things. It can be depleted by, the stress levels we're in, or, the foods that we might choose to eat, not just once, but like over a period of time, or maybe you're not moving your body enough and you're feeling stagnant. So ojas is, in Ayurvedic speak, is our life, like resilient juice that lives in the belly. It lives down in the lower belly. So we're going to focus on that a bit today. So I want you to bend your knees and bring them close together. You don't have to have them touch, but they have to be lined up. And then bring your hands, you can to the fingers to your head and bring your elbows up, or you can put your hands all the way behind your head and bring your elbows up. I'm going to do that just as a little pillow for my head. So my knees and my elbows are pointing straight up to the ceiling. Now this is a little bit of like rubbing your tummy and tapping the top of your head. As you inhale, I want you to let your left knee float open and your right elbow float open. And you're trying to time it so that they both move at the same range and tempo. And then as you exhale, bring your knee and your elbow back up to center. And then when you're ready to inhale again, take your right knee and your left elbow open, and they'll just go wherever they go. And then bringing your right knee and your left elbow to center as you exhale. And then just keep going, alternating your sides. Inhaling, letting the knee and the elbow move apart. And exhaling, moving the knee and the elbow back to center. And again, trying to move in such a way that the elbow and the knee find their end range at the same time, both as they open and as they come back to center. And this is what I said, it's a little bit like rubbing your tummy and tapping your head. Because not only are you working opposite sides of the body, but you're trying to allow those opposite sides of the body to move at the same rate. Of course, with the breath, always inhaling as you move open. And you might even notice one side feels more expansive than the other, or one side feels a little more wonky than the other. Let's do one more, and you want to remember to end on your second side. Hopefully we're all doing that. And then as you get to that final point, release your hands down, release your legs down, and notice if there's any shift or changes. Now that particular movement taps into the deep subtle body of the psoas and the internal structure of the core and our chest area. And they work in a diagonal pattern a lot of times. And so you might notice, oh, I can breathe a little deeper. Or there was a little catch in my giddy up in my lower back and now it feels like it's softening. Just notice what you notice. And then I want you to bend your knees. We're going to roll over to a side. We're going to set up for our first yin pose. And this is where you're going to need the blanket or a bolster. And I have a bolster, so I'm just going to show you here. This bolster or blanket is going to go under your sacrum. Okay? So you can do that one of two ways. Ideally, you're just going to put it next to you. Lie down on the floor, push your hips up into a bridge, and then slide this underneath you. And so depending on how easy or hard that is, you might also just lay over it, lay back down and lay over it. And so if you've got a bolster, it's going to cover a lot more of your body than maybe the blanket might. So just make sure your lower back and your pelvis is comfortable and relaxed. And so from here, this is stages. We're going to do this in stages. The first stage, I want you to just slide your right leg down so that it's extended on the floor. And just pause there for a moment. Now, if you have psoas issues or maybe lower back issues or both, this might be plenty for you. Depending on how high your bolster is or your blanket, The lower it is, the easier it is. Okay, so just find your sweet point. I've got a lot of tightness in my right psoas, so I can feel a lot of sensation here just doing this. And remember that in yin, we're looking for about 40% of the effort. We don't want to go to 80%. That's never going to help us, especially if we're talking about things that are somatic in nature, uh, deep fascial tissue in nature. The harder we push, the more it contracts, the more it goes into that reactivity mode. And so we're in a situation where we're safe. We're going to start to open up slowly. All right, the second part is to pick up your left foot, draw your left knee in towards your chest. Now, if this starts to feel like, wow, that's way too much, just leave your foot on the floor. If you've got a lot of freedom in your psoas, this is going to feel a little bit more doable. Now, I can tell you also from someone who has a tight psoas that it's not uncommon to feel this in your lower back on the same side. So if I've got my right leg down and my right psoas is tight, it's hooked up into that right side of my back, my lower back and sacrum. So it's not uncommon to feel and sense things there. Remember 40%, maybe 50%, but not any higher than that. And so breathing into the whole side of the right leg, right lower belly, feeling and sensing whatever is present. Alrighty. From here, go ahead and put your left foot down and then carefully slide your right foot up. Pause there for a moment. So this class, I told you in the beginning, is all about ojas, which lives in this lower quadrant of our body. So when this is congested or not functioning or super tight, it really does have an effect. Go ahead and slide the left leg down. So from here, we're going to pause. And just notice and feel what's going on this side now. And so ojas has this, when we have a lot of ojas in our tissues, they feel healthy. The tissues feel healthy, and there's a lot of resilience in the tissues when we feel stressed or we come into some kind of illness. And it's taught that the ojas gets depleted easily if we're not taking great care. And as an Ayurveda, we always teach the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the time, you're doing the most you can do to preserve your ojas, your vitality and resiliency. And 20% of the time, you can kind of fuss around. Many of us do it the opposite. We do 80% of the time, we're not doing the best thing we could be doing, and 20% of the time, we are really working at it. So think about that with your own self. Now go ahead and bring your right knee up if you're going to do that. Remember, you don't have to. This is the second part. And so you want to not try to activate your legs. You want to hold your right leg if you're doing it in such a way that the leg is not working. And the left leg is relaxed. And you're just breathing into the sensations. So yin, in my opinion, is a lot like somatic work. You can make it really hard and make it like deep tissue rolfing too, and that's not wrong. But I like this idea of softening into the subtlety of what's going on and really breathing in and feeling and sensing what we would call these compensation or reactivity patterns in our body. And in the case of the psoas, that's what we're working with at the moment, it does have a lot to do with how we breathe. And so when you're in a reactivity mode or stressed out in whatever way, the psoas can contract, go into fight or flight, and then it contracts against the diaphragm tendon, and then our diaphragm doesn't work right, and then we can't breathe properly, and then that puts us even more into fight or flight. And it's just this big, weird cycle that we can try to break as we're bringing into our own awareness what's going on. Alrighty. And then go ahead and put your right foot down and slide your left foot up. Okay, now take a moment. This last one may or may not work for you, so you're just going to try. I want you to see if you can slide your right leg down and then see if you can slide your left leg down. So you're in this big kind of bow shape. And if that feels too hard, you've got two choices. You can either lower the blanket so that it's shorter, closer to the ground, or you can do one leg at a time. I will call halfway through. And so you can repeat what we did before. If you're in this shape and you want to add a little bit more juju to it, hold your forearms and bring your arms up over your head so that you're nice and long and open in the front of your body. Remember that tension against tissues is what we're looking for, so don't be afraid if there's some kind of discomfort somewhere. We just don't want it to be pain. And so I can feel discomfort in my lower back, but that is not what I would call pain. It's almost like I know it's pressing against some soft tissue that over the course of this practice will help. And I love to remind people, what the difference is between tension and pain. Okay, you're about halfway through if you're on one leg. Tension is that like you're pushing against a muscle or you're giving it a little stretch or you feel a sensation that sort of inwardly is not a bad thing. There's an instinct or intuition around it. Pain or compression is usually when you're pressing against a bone, like bone on bone. Like in this case, you could be pressing against your vertebrae. They might be close together, or they might be pushing against each other, and that would cause pain. And that's not where you want to be. That has nothing more to do than how we were put together, how our body is shaped, and what the sort of action is in the shape. All right, go ahead and bend your knees. Let your arms come down if you brought them over your head. Now this is the vulnerable part. I want you to lift your hips up carefully and then slide what's underneath you out of there. And go ahead and put your hips back down on the floor. And feel free to adjust yourself here, but go slow. We were in that shape for a while. So you might want to rock your pelvis gently. You might want to let your knees swish side to side gently. I definitely wouldn't pull my knees to my chest in a really aggressive, hard way. You could pull your knees to your chest, but gently. This area of our body is vulnerable, and if it feels like you're gonna do something that might injure it on some level, it will go into contraction phase again, and then we're back to where we started. Alrighty. Second piece we're going to do, you don't need your bolster or your blanket. We're going to move into a gentle twist. So I want you to open your feet up a little. Take your hips over to the left. And then we're going to let the knees drift over to the right. And I have your feet apart on purpose so that you can feel specifically this top hip, maybe internal rotation around this area. Then take your left arm away from you. You can actually take both arms open if you like, but focus more on the left shoulder so that you're actually opening up this left whole side. And if you want, you can take your left arm up over your head as if you're sliding it along the floor, creating some length between your left arm, left torso, and left knee. All right. And then just breathe into this side. Now, if you don't know what to do with this right hand and you don't want it out on the floor, you can put it on your right leg, hand on your right inner thigh, just kind of anchor yourself there. I don't care what you do with your head. Some people like to turn their head towards their left side. I'm focusing a little bit more on the connective tissue around the left armpit, chest, deep inner belly on the left side, and of course the psoas. And if you start to feel like, there's not much going on, you could take your right foot and put it on top of your left leg to encourage a little bit more range of motion, but don't do that if it's too aggressive. Remember, we're looking for 40 to 50% of an effort. The other option you could do is to take your right foot and put it on the top of your left thigh, not like you're hanging on it, but on the front of it, and gently push like you're trying to slide your skin towards your knee. And that will actually create a little bit more fascial length. But again, that's really dependent on what you're feeling in your body. You don't need to overwork. So somatic work is working with the body's intelligence. That's basically the simple language. We're listening and feeling and connecting to the sensations of the body so that we can start to unwind or disconnect these reactivity patterns that we all have. We all have them. And so when you feel and sense something, just breathe into it. That's another way to really connect is with the breath, as we know as yogis. All right, go take a nice deep breath. If your right foot's on your left leg, take it down and then very slowly start to bring yourself back up to center. Lower your left arm, bring yourself back into the middle with your hips and pause. So again, if this area of your body feels tight or vulnerable, you could pretty much guess that these stress responses in the body are helping these tissues stay a little contracted. So now we're going to do the other side. So take your hips over to the right and let your legs just gently float over to the left. Remember, your feet are apart on purpose. And then see what you want to do with your arms. So maybe you're in cactus, that would be ideal. Pause here for a moment, checking out how you're feeling. Breathing. And again, if you feel like there's nothing going on, you could always put your left foot on top of your right leg, kind of giving it a little bit of extra juice. Sliding your right arm up along the floor like you're trying to reach to something behind you. Opening up your right armpit chest, your right side torso, your right inner groin. And then if you feel like you still need something, remember the foot could land not on top, but on the front of your quadricep, pressing gently the skin like you're trying to slide your skin down towards your knee.
And it would feel a little bit like, I'm doing it to myself, I feel a little bit like somebody's got a hold of my leg and it's gently pulling my leg longer, not trying to push it to the ground. That's a different action. Breathing into that lower quadrant on the right side. Try to hang out around that 40 or 50%. The breath is deep in the body. And so what a lot of people are talking to me about right now, this sort of vein of, how do we stay calm in this chaos? How do we move throughout the world? And I know myself, I can, just like everybody else, get hooked up into the chaos. And it's almost an energetic like hook is how I feel about it, how I can sense it. All right, go ahead and take a nice deep breath. Release your foot if you've got it on there. Release your arm as you slowly come back up. And then bring your hips back in the middle and pause. Now from here, let your knees just drift into each other. Put your hands on your body. And I want you to just breathe deep into the belly. And finding that nice full inhale and exhale. And so if you think about, like, say for instance, you're watching the news, God forbid, and you're watching a story and you're getting yourself all worked up. It's not you yourself doing it, but the energy of what you're watching. You get yourself into this feeling or this reactive mode around what's happening. In my mind, what that feels like is it's like a hook, and it hooked up and went into your energetic body, and now you got it. It's like an alien. Alien with its, tentacles. And I'm going to learn more about this week, but if you think about your boundaries and like physical boundaries, right? Like you've got a physical boundary of the house, and you've got a physical boundary of maybe who you talk to and who you don't, or you've got a physical boundary around what you eat, lots of things like that. Think about your energetic boundary, things you hear, things you see, things you feel, that you take in through your senses. And then once it gets in there, once it gets hooked up in there, it's really hard to get rid of. It's like you got to shake it off like a dog. I always wish we could do that, right? Just shake it off like a dog, and then the dog's just fine. So you might ask yourself as you're contemplating this idea if this is something that you resonate with, because it happened to me this weekend. That's why I'm talking about it. And I just got myself all worked up. And it didn't really seem to matter what I was doing, but what the actions I was taking was actually making it worse, rather than me stopping, breathing, doing a yoga practice, all the things we know what to do, right? So I share that only because this is the time of life that we are in right now. And we really have to be, it's our job to be really diligent so that we don't deplete our ojas, going all the way back to that. All righty. So moving on, I want you to roll over to your side and push yourself up into a sitting position. And we'll move into our next shape, which is butterfly pose. So, sitting on something is helpful. Having some props around you for your head is helpful. You know what I like and what I usually suggest for you. And so if you have a bolster, you can put it in front of you. It's a nice way to bring the floor up. It's a nice way to put some tension or pressure against your feet. You can also use your blocks to help your placement of your forehead. So as you come forward, you can go ahead and put your blocks right where your forehead is and let your head rest on something. Very calming. So whether you have a bolster or whether you have blocks or both, find that space where you can feel and sense something in your body. This is the outer band now that we're working with in the back body. And you allow yourself to be in that shape just to that 40 to 50%. And as we go through this time, you'll notice that the shapes and the sensation in the shapes start to soften and go away. And that just means that everything's getting a little bit more resilient, a little bit more juicy. And so you can adjust yourself as you need to. Another way to think about ojas is that when we have optimal ojas in our body, we feel juicy. We don't feel dry. We don't feel tight. We don't feel vulnerable. And ojas affects not only our physical body, but our mental body. And so we feel more, and I use the word resilient because resilient in our tissues means you can fall and then you can get back up and you're pretty resilient. You're not going to break a bone. You're not going to be down on the bed for 3 days. You know, you might feel a little sore, but you're going to get up and everything's going to be fine. Same thing can happen in your mind where you're dealing with something, but you've got some resilience around it and you can be in a place where maybe you need to take a break, walk away, change course, but you're pretty resilient in the way that you can take care of yourself in that way. So it's really hard to talk about one part of the body without the other parts of the body not being affected because it's all affected. The other thing I wanted to mention, I was teaching this class on Friday in person, and one of the ladies kept yawning like excessively over and over and over again. And she asked me why at the end of class. And it's been my experience that when people yawn like that, especially when they're in a class where, you know, you're kind of letting go a little bit, you don't have that guard up. The diaphragm lets go, the psoas, this tissue, all this tissue around the middle of your body softened, and then the diaphragm can finally work. So I was trying to explain that to her, that she's probably depleted and not breathing very well because she's in a fight or flight stress response. I told her to do more yin at home. Okay, now take a nice deep breath. And then slowly walking yourself up. It's like the sweetest pose, right? Moving your props out of the way. Bringing your legs up to center, stretching your legs out. Okay. So let's take the right leg, bend the knee, and bring the foot really high up on the leg, as far as you can. So this leg, as much as you can, is open. We're going to focus over this straight leg. Now, if you are like me and you have a fairly short hamstring situation back in the back of your leg, put something like a towel underneath your knee so that it's not locked down. You're just going to take a nice deep breath, sit up straight, and then as you exhale, start to fold forward. And then you're going to find maybe your props, like your blocks. Maybe they're going to be the floor and you're going to rest your forearms on them. If you have the freedom, you can reach around and grab and lace your fingers around your foot. Let your head rest in a comfortable position. You might even bend your elbows and let your head rest in your hands. And so finding that place where you can pause, soften. Can you notice that when I say the word soften, there's tension in some of your body, like maybe in your leg or maybe in your jaw? I notice it all the time. When I say it out loud, I notice my body doing it too. And so the other thing that I'm thinking about with this ojas and living in a chaotic world is that there's this balance between how much we get involved with the external and how much we kind of retreat into the internal. And it's a dance, right? It's kind of like deciding somebody invites you to a party, and you really want to go, but you're exhausted. What do? Do you push past the exhaustion because you don't want to miss out on whatever? Or do you back up and take care of yourself? And so we're challenged with this all the time. It's the same idea. And so the more we don't listen to our own internal compass and maybe stay in our own lane, I taught a class around that a long time ago, stay in your own lane, the more we deplete our ojas. So I'm one of those people that I like to go out and do and be and all the things. I used to. I don't do that anymore, really. But it's really an interesting concept to think about that, how you were maybe 10 years or 20 years ago compared to how you are now. And I don't know about you, but I want to be full of ojas as I'm aging. I don't want to be depleted, because that's when you really aren't living a very fulfilled, healthy life. Okay, so take a nice deep breath. And then we're going to come up to sitting. So come up nice and slow so that your body's now upright. And I just want you to turn towards this bent leg. Go slow. And wherever this turn is, wherever you feel that kind of stopping point, put your hands down, one on the floor behind you, one on your leg that's bent, and allow your head to just keep turning until you find your endpoint range. Try as much as you can not to over pull with your arms. Just let your arms be in this sort of stabilizing place. On a little lighter note, did anybody watch the Academy Awards last night? I don't typically watch them, but my husband was on the phone with his son, and so I turned it on just for funsies. Watched all the beautiful people. I'm not one to go to a lot of movies, so I didn't see a lot of what was going on. But it did make me want to see a couple of shows. And so breathing, settling, allowing. And the somatic work in the yin practice is really about connecting to what the body is trying to tell you. The body's intelligence is really profound, and it's we're really good at ignoring it most of the time. And so noticing, like just something so simple as, have you ever done this? I'm sure you have. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. But you're in the middle of something and you don't go because you got to get this whatever done. That's not listening to your body's intelligence. And consequences can happen with that if you do that over and over again. But that's a simple example. Or you know you haven't drank enough water, you haven't really paid attention to it, and you feel a little bit depleted, but you're in the middle of something and you don't want to be bothered. That's not listening to your body's intelligence. You take one more nice deep breath. And then slowly relax, letting yourself unwind, coming back. And then if you've got props around you, move them so that you can bring this leg in and down. So you come back to your neutral legs out in front of you pose. So I'm being a little lighthearted about listening to the body, but I mean, I do it too, right? We all do it. We're humans. All right, so now we're on the next side. So left leg comes up, put it where you can. It's okay to prop up this bent leg if your hip doesn't like it. And the first one is down over this front leg. So taking a moment here, sitting up nice and tall so you feel that elongated spine, and then start to fold over this front leg. And then once you're there, pause. Now I want to comment about something, because if my blocks weren't here and I had just my hands on the floor, my straight leg would fall off to the side. And a lot of people would say, well, that's not really neutral, and I want my leg to stay in neutral. The question I would ask you is there a lot of sensation going on in the leg when it's tilted open? If the answer is no, then maybe bring it up to neutral and see if it changes. In my body, it's actually a yes. So I'm going to let it fall out to the side, and then I'm going to hold here. So remember, that's just a very simple way of allowing the body to move in the way it needs to, so that you can use discernment and make a decision around, is this actually a better shape for me at the moment? It really does challenge a lot of our previous experience around proper alignment and what we have to do and what we should do. I'm kind of done with all those shoulds. And so just going back to the listening to the body and the somatics, the intelligence of the body, if we think of every single cell, and we have trillions of them in our body, has this intelligence, has this ojas. And every single moment, it's trying to have a communication and relationship with ourselves in the mental body and the energetic body to live our best life, to live our most optimal, vital, resilient life. I find that so fascinating. And it gives us a moment to pause and really contemplate our choices. And as Chris and I teach all the time in our courses, are the choices that you're making moving you toward or away from your desire? Simple question. And then think about the 80-20 rule, because we're not perfect and we're never going to be. All right, take a nice deep breath. And then slowly walk yourself up. And then keep yourself in this shape, in this leg shape, and then just sit up tall and start to turn towards the bent leg now. And find that edge where you can't go anymore. Let your head turn, and then find your hands in a way that's supported to hold you in this shape. Don't try to make it any bigger. Don't try to yank yourself around. Just find a place to hold and breathe. Softening into anything that's coming forward. It could be a sensation in the body. It could also be something that you're thinking about, something that's come up in your mind. And as I always say, thoughts and emotions, we could even say sensations, but they'll continue if we allow them, are like energy flowing through us. So try not to get that hook, that energetic hook, into some kind of belief system or thought. Just let it flow through you. Keep the breath moving downward in the belly. All right, take a nice deep breath. And then as you exhale, slowly starting to come back and around. Move your props out of the way so you can bring your leg up and stretch your leg down. All right, our last seated pose here. I want you to open both legs up. Go wherever you can go. Don't worry about the furthest stretch. Remember that 40%. And then you can use whatever props you like. A nice way to do this is kind of like what we did with butterfly. You could take one of your blocks and put it underneath the edge of your bolster if you're using one, so it brings the floor up for you. You can also use your blocks without the bolster and put them in maybe in front of you so you can rest your head on it. But we're going to come forward like we did in butterfly. So sit up nice and tall. And then as you exhale, start to move yourself toward the floor, finding that edge. Now, what's nice to do is to reach your arms out in front of you. I've got a bolster, so I can hook my wrist over the edge of the bolster, and it brings in my back body a lot more than if my arms are resting by my side. But again, your practice, your journey, listen to your deep inner awareness to your body. Try not to hold your legs in a particular way. Let your legs go the way they want to go. So the fact that you're here in this yin class, listening to this chatter that I'm doing today, it's no coincidence that you're here listening to this message. And the message is for me as well as it is for you. How we can build ojas and stay resilient throughout these days, weeks, months, and into the years ahead. Chris and I started our healthy habits again for 2025 with our first one in March, which is legs up the wall pose. And so if you did legs up the wall pose every single day for the month of March, it would really help to build your ojas, your vitality, bring you to homeostasis and balance rather than staying in this fight or flight place. And so I offer that as a way to self-care and to join us in the Healthy Habits Challenge this year. If you didn't hear about it because maybe you're not on Facebook, because I posted it this weekend, you'll get an email this week about it. And then you just join us as you can every day. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Really, really good juju practice. Ojas building practice. Take one more nice deep breath. And then slowly making your way back up. All right, it's Shavasana time. So move slowly. Find your way into Shavasana. Remember to use your blankets. Maybe you have an eye pillow to cover your eyes. And allow yourself to lay down in a way that feels completely relaxed and restorative to you. No more tension, no more work. And as we always do, once you're lying down and you feel settled, go ahead and take a nice deep breath and let the exhale help you to become still, quiet, moving more and more inward.
Take a longer and deeper breath. And let that breath start to reach to your fingers and toes, helping you come back to your body. As you feel ready, you can start to bend your knees, gently roll to a side. Pausing there for a moment before coming up to sitting. Remember to take your time. Once you're seated, hands can come to the heart center, holding the echoes, the essence of the practice. Really sensing and feeling the difference in your body and mind. Know that the practice and this type of work is here for you whenever you need it. In gratitude always for our time together on the mat, our deep body wisdom and guiding light. May our light always shine brightly, and may we always see the light in each other. Namaste.